welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I know I've said this multiple, this is the cutest thing you've ever made. I promise you, this is the cutest thing I've ever made, and if you make it, which, please do, it's the cutest thing you've ever made. Today, we are making the Bitty Bug Pack, and this comes to us from Carolina Little Stitches. No joke. The cutest thing you've ever made. Look at this. It's a little tiny backpack. This is such an adorable, scrap-busting, easy pattern. Easy. I'm gonna say it, like, if you have been kind of curious about gussets and corners and you've been nervous, start with this. Sometimes the smaller version of a bag is actually harder than making the bigger version. Not with this one. This is so easy to come together and it is so stinking adorable. So in my opinion, if you haven't tested out gussets in these little corners and stuff like that, I highly suggest you try this pattern because once you get it on this, you can move on to the bigger bags. But let's take a look at this cutie patootie. Now I'm gonna tell you there are so many options. Kayla over at Carolina Little Stitches obviously had a lot of fun designing this pattern because she gave you a ton of front panel options, a bunch of back panel options. She also gave you 2 options for the gussets. This is like the normal size, but there's also a wider one. I have one to show you in just a moment. This is also like a little keychain. We're gonna put a little swivel hook on the top, which is so stinking cute. So this is one version. I would say it's a pretty popular one. It's got this cute little tiny snap pocket on the front. What are you gonna put in there? I don't know. I don't know what you're gonna put in there, but it's adorable, isn't it? It's so stinking cute. It makes it look like a backpack. If you don't have the hardware to do the snap and stuff like that, like I said, there's lots of other options. This is the only one that has like that snap hardware on it. On the back, I'm keeping it nice and simple, nothing fancy. I did another one where I did an ID pocket. I'll show you that in just a moment. We have these little tiny backpack straps. How cute is that? My kids have already asked if we can put it on Kiki. We're not putting this on a bird. Please don't put this on a bird. But it is so stinking cute. Little backpack straps. The pattern includes templates if you're using a number 3 or a number 5 zipper, so lots of options with that. Open this up, and then on the inside, it's just a little tiny backpack with a little slip pocket. It does use binding to close off the raw edges, so it's not a birthed bag, it's a bound bag. Very, very easy. Great for your scraps. I mean, like, seriously, this one was entirely made out of scraps. Okay, let me show you the second one I made. I'm so addicted to these. I want to just make them all weekend. Like, that's all I want to do is make these little bitty bags. So this one is cute. I don't know if you can see. Let me see. So can you see in the front there, it has like a clear window and it has like shaker bits. And so I love these things. I'll have a link down below from where I got these. I got this idea from Amber over at the Crafty Reporter. She is magical with how she does this stuff. But it's got these fun little things in there. And I made the little star here a little clear window. So it's 2 pieces of clear vinyl, things like that. This is a little bit wider. So this is the wider version. Here you go. So it is actually wider. It's noticeably wider. See that? And I would say the wider one, if you have material you want to use on your zipper gusset and you really want it to be noticeable, do the wider one. This one actually did a number 3 zipper as well. If you want your zipper to stand out more, then I would use the more narrow one. On this one has a clear little ID pocket. Look how cute that is. And you can put your stuff in there. Yeah, this would be a great theme park bag, right? This is like a Universal Studios annual pass. It's expired. I haven't been there in forever. But isn't that fun? That is so stinking cute. And then once again, on the inside, I just do the slip pocket because I do love a slip pocket. And this is where I put my little tag too. I love this bag so stinking much. I can't even tell you. All right, like I said, this one was used some scraps. So this was using a lot of the scraps from my Vegas Gila Monster. And what, you know, I love these. You know how much I love strapsies. Strapsies are little decorations we put on our bag straps and things like that. I love this little backpack because I can just clip it onto my strapsie. Look how cute that is. It's a little backpack for my bag. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine clipping this onto a backpack for kids going back to school, guys? I know we're in the middle of summer, but back to school is going to come in a moment. Like, summer lasts a breath, right? One moment it's summer, the next moment we're back to school. So this would be an amazing little gift to make for kids going back to school. An amazing gift for teachers. Because again, teachers usually have IDs, keys, things they have to carry around, little things, chapsticks, things like that. So this would be great for them to clip on to the things they have to carry around. Because it's just, I mean, I've never made anything cuter than this. I mean, my kids, outside of my kids, I haven't made anything cuter than this. This is so stinking cute. So thank you so much to Carolina Little Stitches for allowing me to do a tutorial for these. I am obsessed. I can't even explain how happy these make me. If you haven't grabbed the pattern, please go grab the pattern. I'll tell you, there are SVG cut files for this, so if you have a Cricut or Silhouette or anything like that, you can use your cutting machine to cut out all these little intricate pieces, but I did not do that. I just printed off all of the templates and I traced them. Even this, like, this little inner star here on this one here, that clear pocket, I traced it and cut it by hand. So you don't have to have a cutting machine if you want this to look super perfect. You can just use your scissors. That's what I did. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comments section. If you make these, let me know. Like, especially if you make these at all, make sure you tag Carolina Little Stitches. I'll have her handle down in the description of this video and down on the bottom of the video. If you make these using my video, please tag me also because I want to see your version. I have 1,000 ideas. I'm obsessed with these. Like, when I was younger, for sure, when I was in middle school, high school, if I would have seen one of these, I would have bought it in a second. So if you have any craft fairs coming up for the fall, I would put money on that these would be good sellers. I would. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, so we're gonna go through the materials for the 2 different bags and then the general tools, and then we'll go through the pattern pieces of each bag. And then we'll work on the front panels of each bag, the back panels of each bag, and then I'll just show you how to put one of them together because it'll be the same for both. So for this first bag that we're gonna make, this is the one with the little flap on it, which is it's just so stinking cute. This is also the normal size, so it's not the wider one, it's just gonna be the normal one. For the front and back panels, we're gonna use this Luxe from Fabric Therapy. It is so soft, but also I think it's gonna be good for bags. I have not played with this yet before, so we're gonna use that. And then we have a water resistant canvas for the lining. I would suggest at least a fat quarter of your material. This is a scrap project, so really you just need small bits and pieces here and there. But a fat quarter is a pretty safe spot. And then I have 2 rolls of this matte glow vinyl. This is from Underground Fabrics. This stuff is so much fun, and we're gonna use this for the gusset and for the straps. I like to get super scrappy with these little backpacks, so that's why I'm mixing it up a lot. You could just use this for pretty much everything except for some of these straps and things, because there are some pieces in like the flap here where you do have to use vinyl because they are left raw edge for this version specifically. But again, just scraps of vinyl for that. And then we have some foam. The foam I do highly recommend. It's what gives the bag good structure. Okay, and then for the second bag, the one with the little window on the front of it, you need about the same thing. We have a vinyl I'm going to use for the front and back panel. I have a blue vinyl I'm going to use for the gussets and for the straps and things like that. Again, a water-resistant canvas lining. And then I have some clear vinyl, and this is going to be for that clear window on the front. Again, about a fat quarter of each of these. You don't need as much foam this time because we are not going to be adding foam to the front panel. We're only going to add foam to the back panel. All right, here's most of the other stuff we'll be using today. As usual, I'm using a Tex 45 weight thread on the top through the needle and a Gutermann thread in the bobbin. My needle of choice is a Microtex 8012. I have 2 sizes of double-sided tape. Really the one you want is the 1/8 of an inch wide because we have some very narrow spots there, but 1/4 inch you could work with if you only had that. And then we have a stiletto. A stiletto is going to be really helpful with those curves on the gusset when we're sewing it together. A lighter for cleaning up loose ends. Small snips for our threads. Lots of plastic clover clips to hold everything together. A silver ink pen for marking on vinyl. An air erasing marker for marking on everything else. A hole punch and a rivet press. The hole punch and rivet press are specifically for the snaps. I'm using metal snaps on my little bag. You don't need all this if you're going to use the plastic snaps and things like that. You could just use, you know, a handheld, smaller setting tool. But I will be using this today because I have it. All right, here's all the pieces for bag number 1. This is the smaller bag with the flap. So I mean smaller by just not the wide gusset. For this, you're going to need your front and back panels. So I have a front panel here and I have my back panel. These are both that Luxe. I've only made this so far with vinyl, so I'm interested to see how that lighter weight material does. Because I have the Luxe, for this one I do have 2 cuts of my foam. I think that's going to help. And then we have 2 cuts of the same panel, that's your lining material. And then I have the lining slip pocket right here. And then for the gusset, we have 2 cuts of the vinyl for the zipper gusset. And then we have 1 cut of the vinyl for the bottom gusset and another cut of the lining material for the bottom gusset. There is no lining material for the zipper panels. You don't need it. And then for the front pocket with the flap, I have 1 cut of vinyl for the bottom of the pocket, and then I have 2 cuts of vinyl for the top of the pocket, the flap. I have about a yard of binding. This is just that nylon fold over adhesive binding. And then I like to have at least 9 inches of zipper tape and then a zipper pull to go with it. I am using a number 5 zipper, and make sure you know that because when you use the pattern pieces, there's different pattern pieces depending on if you're using a number 3 zipper or a number 5 zipper. I'm using only number 5 zippers today. And then because this is a little pocket, I have my pieces here to create the snap on it. One thing I forgot to mention were these pieces here. So this pink piece here is going to be for the little loop on the top of the bag that I install my swivel hook on. So this is a 1/2 inch wide swivel hook. So I install that on that. And then these 2 other cuts of vinyl are for the backpack straps. All right, all the pieces for the second bag are a little bit different. So we have the front panel. The front panel has this inner star cut out. You could do whatever shape you want. I think a ghosty would be really cute actually. But the heart and star are included in the pattern. So I'm using the star one. And then I have 2 cuts of my clear vinyl. You could use like 1 cut of vinyl and 1 cut of another material so that you could like overlay it like that if you'd like. I want them both to be clear, so I have 2 cuts of my clear vinyl for that. And then the back panel is just the same shape as the lining and everything. And then for the back panel, I am going to do that clear ID window, so I just have 1 cut of clear vinyl for that. I have my bottom gusset exterior and my bottom gusset lining, my 2 top zipper gussets. These are like little glow-in-the-dark teeny tiny bats, and these are going to be shakers. So I'm going to stick these between the 2 layers of clear vinyl to create like a fun little effect, and it'll glow, which is fun. And then I have 2 cuts of my vinyl for the backpack straps and 1 cut that is a little smaller. That is for that loop on the top to hold the swivel hook here. And the swivel hook is a 1/2 inch wide swivel hook. And then I have my zipper tape, once again, at least 9 inches. I'm using number 5, so number 5 zipper tape, number 5 zipper pull. Since the front is a clear window, I'm only using 1 cut of foam, and that's going to be for the back panel. And of course I have my bag tag, and then I have my lining pieces over here, just 1 lining piece because I don't need a lining piece for the front of the bag. And then I have the slip pocket again. Slip pocket's optional, but I like it. And then for binding, I'm going to use this Bianni fold over elastic. We're just going to try that on the binding today. Okay, so we're going to run through front panels of each bag first, and then back panels of each bag, and then I'll show you the construction of one of them. So I'm going to start with the front panel of this little backpack that has the little snap flap, which is so thick and cute. And the first thing we want to do is prep our little pocket. So we're going to take our 2 flap pieces, and we're going to lay them wrong sides together to create just a nice little flap that's right sides on both sides. I'm going to use a little bit of tape here to help me hold this together. So just a couple pieces of tape, and then remove the paper, and then just stick these 2 flap pieces wrong sides together. There we go. Now I'm going to take these to the sewing machine, and around the flap piece, I'm going to top stitch along the sides and the bottom, so all the curvy bits at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not going to top stitch along the top edge, but on the bottom pocket piece here, I am going to top stitch only along the top straight edge. I'm going to leave the tails long, and they're going to be hanging on the back side, and I'm just going to tie them into like 3 little knots, and that's going to help secure that top stitching. So you see how I have these really long tails here? When I say that I'm going to tie them off, I'm going to look at the back side, so the bobbin side, and I'm going to pull on the bobbin thread just a little bit. Let me show you this side. And when you do that, you're going to pull the top thread to the back. Then I can use my stiletto to just pull that top thread to the back, and then I can just tie these into like 3 knots, and that just helps secure this. All right, and you guys know I'm bad about doing this ahead of time, but you should be marking the midpoints on the top and bottom of all of your panel pieces. There's also gusset marks and backpack marks. I'm going to mark those. I'll mark those as we get to them, but you should be marking those responsibly ahead of time. I'll show you. Hold on. So I'm just going to fold this in half to find the midpoints on the top and the bottom. And then with the front panel piece, I'm just going to lay it over my front panel like this. And the one thing you definitely do want besides the top and bottom midpoint marks are these gusset placements. It's going to make it a lot easier to sew the gusset in place later. So just take your time to mark where the gusset placements are. There we go. So I just grabbed a ruler and I measured from the bottom up to this top line for the pocket bottom placement. So this top straight line of the bottom placement of the pocket. I just used a ruler to measure what that was, and then I just transferred over here. So I just marked up from the bottom edge, drew a horizontal line, and then also made sure I marked the midpoint of that line. And then for my pocket bottom, I marked the midpoint just using an air erasing marker on the very top edge of that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up the midpoints on that line, and I'm just going to use that horizontal line to help keep my pocket straight. And then I've got some of this paper tape here, and I'm going to use this paper tape to just hold this pocket in place. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end, and once again pulling all the threads to the back and tying them off. Okay, now that that's top stitched on, we just have to attach the flap. Okay, so for the flap, I'm pretty much doing the same thing. This time I just measured up from the bottom and to where the line is for the pocket flap placement. I just measured that distance and marked a horizontal line, and once again marked the midpoint on that line. And then for the flap, I'm just going to mark the midpoint on the edge of my flap. You're going to lay your flap so that it's wrong side up. So if you have top stitching that you want to be on the front, it's going to be wrong side up. Line up that midpoint mark with the midpoint on that line, and line up the raw edge with the line. So it should look something like this. There's just a small gap between the bottom pocket and the flap. Grab some tape and just tape this flap down. And now you're going to top stitch just along the bottom straight edge of the flap at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Again, tie off your threads. Okay, so you see whenever you're done, this is going to fold over. And it's going to go just like that. Isn't that stinking cute? And I know it kind of pulls the material down right now, but once you have the stabilizer in there and once this is all sewn together in the bag, you won't have that problem. Now I'm just going to use the snap placement for the flap to help me figure everything out, because if you don't get these perfectly lined up, it's a little crooked. I'll tell you, the first one I did it's a little crooked. So I'm just going to lay my flap template over my flap, and there's a hole here for the placement for the snap, and I'm just going to mark in that hole so I know where the female end of the snap goes. And I'm going to grab my hole punch, and I'm going to punch a hole where that mark is. Okay, so now I'm going to fold over the top of my flap. And this is a little tricky because my material is so loosey-goosey. I'm trying to keep it flat so I can see it straight. That looks pretty straight, doesn't it? So with it folded over, how I want it to look in the end, I'm going to use that hole, and I'm going to put my marking tool through that hole to mark on the bottom where the other placement's going to go. Okay, because my vinyl is a little bit on the thick side, it is a little high, but that's okay. That's where it's going to go. So now I'm going to punch a hole where my mark is for the bottom flap. There we go. So now I'm going to grab my hole punch and my die set for this. I'm going to start with the female one, so I'm going to put in the die set for the female side of the snap. And then with the way this goes, the top of the pocket, when it's folded down, it's going to be like this, so that's where the cap goes. And then on the underside of the pocket, we have the piece that kind of looks like a donut. That goes over it just like that. And I'm just going to press this in place. And then I'm going to switch out the dies for the male die set. If you're using plastic cam snaps and you have a rip press like this, you don't have to switch out your dies. It's really, really convenient. It's simple. So then I have like the longer pokey bit. That's going to go from the back of the pocket through to the front, poking out just like that. And then the shorter pokey bit goes on top of it. And then we're just going to insert this over the bottom die and press in place. There's our little snap. Again, I know because my material is pretty lightweight, it feels like it's like pulling the material in half, but once this is all sewn together, it won't do that, especially once we have that stabilizer in there. Okay, the last thing I want to do for this is add my bag tag. So I'm just going to center my bag tag over the top of the flap. I'm going to grab some double-sided tape and add it to the back of my tag. And like I said, just kind of eyeballing it and centering it over the top pocket. And now I'm just going to top stitch along all the edges of my bag tag at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, and there you go. That's how we make the front panel for this cute little snap pocket on the front. Now we're going to work on the front pocket for the star applique shaker, which is so fun. So the first thing we have to do is create the shaker. So we're going to, this has paper on the back. It's clear vinyl, but it has paper. So I'm going to remove the paper from the clear vinyl. And I'm going to pull these two together. So if you have like a different vinyl for the back, both of them are going to be right side up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew along all the edges except for like one corner here. So I'm going to start at this top rounded part of the star and just sew all around this, top stitching at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, except I'm going to stop pretty much at the top of these two adjacent pokes of my star, because I need to leave an opening so that I can pour some of my little shaker stuff inside of it. So I'm just going to do that in a corner. I found that pouring it in from the corner is a little easier, so I'm just going to start and stop on the 2 points of the star that are adjacent to one another. Okay, so when you're top stitching around this, you want to make sure your top stitching doesn't get too far inside, because we don't want the stitching that's holding these 2 pieces together to be seen in the end. So now I'm going to separate these 2 pieces. I'm just going to use my stiletto to kind of get in there, because they like to stick to each other. So I'm just going to separate them out a bit. And then I'm going to grab my shaker stuff, and however you want to do this. I'm going to try to be gentle and not get them everywhere, but I tend to be a messy person. So I'm just going to pour these little bats in here. And the more you add, the less you can see through it. So, and the more likely you will have to sew over them. These are like little plasticky clay things, so if I do sew over them, it's not the end of the world, but I prefer not to. So I'm trying to just shove them in the middle for now. There we go. Once I close this up, I won't really be able to mess with it too much. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to just close up that little opening that I left, again at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. It's funny, I'm trying so hard to keep them in the center because I don't want to have to sew over them, but once they move, you can't really move them back. Get in the center, you little buggers. Again, it's okay if you sew over them. It shouldn't break your needle or anything. You just don't want to. Okay, so now grab the front panel and lay it wrong side up. And let's grab some double-sided tape. I'm just gonna add a little bit of double-sided tape around the edges of my star, just to hold the plastic shaker in place. Because we don't want that moving around while we're sewing it down. So just add some double-sided tape around the star. Then remove the paper from all your tape. And then lay your shaker star, or whatever shape you're using, right side up. And then take your front panel and lay it over so that you're covering all the top stitching. There we go. And so the goal here is that all my little shaker bits are in the center and that I don't see any of the stitching that's holding those 2 pieces of vinyl together. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're just going to top stitch right along the edge of our vinyl at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this little star in place. How stinking cute is this? So now you can kind of shake it all up, spread out all those little shaker pieces. Go on, get in there, get in all the little corners. Yeah. This is so cute. I love these little shaker things. They're so addictive too. Like when you go to buy them, you can't just buy just like 1 or 2. You have to buy all of them. So I'm just kind of smacking it to get it to spread out. Oh, it's so cute. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to check it out in the dark. All right, so that's how we do the front panel for this one. If you wanted to, you could grab a piece of heat transfer vinyl. Let's say you just did not like the look of the back here. You could grab some heat transfer vinyl and just cut out this exact same shape with the star on the inside also. Cut that out and adhere it over the back of this so that you don't see it. You know, now you have like a lining, but I'm okay with this little lining in the back. So that's the front panel for the star. Okay, so the only like special back panel I'm gonna do is gonna be for this ID window, which I think is so cool. So this is the back panel for that second bag, and here's my ID window. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my back panel overlay, just kind of lay it over here like this. And what I'm interested in is marking the midpoint and also like the bottom curves. Just a little bit. You don't have to mark the entire window here. You just need a general idea of where this panel is going to go. Okay, so I have paper on the back of my clear vinyl, so I'm going to take that paper off. I'm going to mark the midpoint on the bottom of my clear pocket. Again, just with this silver ink pen because I can easily wipe this off anywhere I need to. There we go. So now I'm just going to line this up with those marks I made on the bottom here. There we go. Make sure it looks pretty straight. Then grab some washi tape or paper tape, something to hold it in place. I'm just going to put it on the top. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch from the top corner. So not the corner of the notch, okay? If you do that, you can't fit a card in it. So the top right corner of the entire thing. Start there, top stitch around the right side, the bottom, the left side, and then stop in the top left corner. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end, and once again, tie off your threads on the back side for extra security. All right, there we go. How cute is that? It's so simple. I mean, it's seriously so simple, but honestly, it is incredibly useful. to have something like this, especially if you know you're going to some theme park or just the public library or something like that where you just really need one card, but you don't need a whole bunch of stuff. This is so handy. I love it so much. All right, so that's the back panel for the second bag done. So the remaining steps are the same regardless of your front and back panel, regardless of if you're doing the more narrow or the wider gusset, and regardless of your zipper size. So I'm going to continue on with the pattern now using only this fluorescent pink and green version of it. So the first one with the flowers. We're gonna continue on working with that, and I will finish the other bag, the Haunted Mansion theme one, off camera, and I'll show you what it looks like in the end. So now I have my 2 backpack straps and my loop. Remember, these need to be vinyl. And on the back side of each one of these, I marked a midpoint line going down the very center. For this one, I'm gonna grab my 1/4 inch double-sided tape, and I'm just going to lay my double-sided tape right over that line. And I'm gonna do this for all 3 of these pieces. Okay, and this is for if you're using the vinyl for your straps and your loop. You don't have to. You can use a woven material. I totally forgot the pattern has a whole overview of what to do if you're using that. So that's very smart. I'm using vinyl because I like it. So now I'm going to remove the paper from the tape. And I'm just gonna fold the long raw edges back, wrong sides together, so that the long edge meets the midpoint line. I'm gonna stick it onto that tape. Do this for both sides. So you should have something like this when you're done, and the raw edges on the back. Repeat this for the other backpack strap and the loop. All right, once you have them all taped back, take these to the sewing machine and top stitch along all the edges of all 3 of these at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end on each of these little pieces. So now using your back pattern piece, make sure you already have the gusset placements marked on both sides. Your top and bottom of your back panel should also be marked. And then you're gonna mark strap placement as well. This is just for the back panel. So do your best to get those marked. And I like to do this one little bit at a time. So I'm gonna grab my loop piece and I'm going to thread it through my little 1/2 inch swivel hook, just like this. And then starting with the top, what we wanna do is we wanna have these 2 pieces come up, and one side is gonna go to the left of the midpoint mark and the other side is gonna go to the right, but they meet. So corner to corner of the loops, they meet at the midpoint mark at the top. So what I do is I just kind of do one at a time, but I'm just gonna go baste down these top edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold my loop strap in place. The swivel is facing down towards the center of the back panel. All right, then we're gonna take a backpack strap, and one backpack strap is just gonna slide up right to the left of that loop, and the other backpack strap is gonna slide up just to the right. And I do keep these straight, so they are kind of just right against the top edge of that loop, and we're going to baste these down to the top edge, also at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the top edges are attached. Now we gotta do the bottom edge of the backpack strap. So find your little angled backpack strap mark, and the bottom edge of the strap is gonna line up with that mark. And you should have it overhanging it should be like a 45-degree angle. So you should have some of it overhanging. So the bottom corner of the strap is gonna match up with that line on the side, and then the top corner overhangs to the off side of it. You're gonna do this for both sides, and then we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and just baste down the bottom edges of our backpack strap. And there you go, little backpack straps with this teeny tiny backpack. I just can't get over it, it's so stinking cute. All right, you can set this to the side for just a moment. Now we're gonna work on the slip pocket, which is completely optional, but it's cute, why not? This is a quick make anyways. So you're gonna fold your slip pocket short sides together, wrong sides together. I'm gonna grab a little clip for this one. Just lining up those raw edges and give a good press on the fold. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine. We're just gonna top stitch along the top folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end, tie off your threads. Okay, so now we want to attach this to one of your lining panels, and pretty much we're just going to lay it right on top of the lining panel just like that and sew it down. I find this easier if I take my pocket and lay my pocket wrong side up, so just the back side of the pocket, then take my lining panel and also lay it wrong side up, and then just line it up on the bottom edge and the sides and clip in place. So just get it started on the back. And give it a look from the front, make sure it all looks pretty good. Okay, and then now with the lining panel wrong side up, so you can see these bottom corners here, we're going to just baste this in place at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And once you have that basted down, just cut off the corners of that slip pocket. And there you go. Little tiny slip pocket. Isn't that so cute? Okay, so now I want to get these panels all put together. So the first thing we want to do is make sure all 4 panels, so the 2 lining and the 2 exterior, have their midpoints marked on the top and bottom. This is just going to be easier for later. So if you haven't marked them yet, like I have not, go ahead and do that now. And also make sure your exterior panels have the placement marks for the gusset. Once we add this foam in there, it's going to be harder to mark things like that, at least accurately. So make sure you have all those marked already on the front and back exterior panels. Okay, now we can just grab a lining panel and lay it wrong side up. Grab a foam piece and just center it over it like that. I'm gonna grab my front panel. I'm gonna open up this snap so it doesn't fight me so much. And I'm gonna lay my front panel right side up. And then match up the midpoint marks. If you wanna use like a spray adhesive here, you can. Honestly, it's so small that you really don't need to. You can kind of just move that foam cut around so that it's not in your way. But whatever is easiest for you. I find just kind of sticking it in there and then sandwiching it between the lining and the exterior is just fine. So you can see I'm going around clipping all the edges. So my lining and my exterior are wrong sides together. If you're doing one of the, like the star or the heart panel, depending on what material you're using, you don't have to add the foam in the lining to the front panel. So for example, I have that clear shaker. I don't want to cover that up. So I won't have any foam or the lining on the front panel, but I will have the foam and the lining on the back panel. So once again, back panel lining, wrong side up. And for me, I like the back panel lining to be the one with the slip pocket. Lay it wrong side up, put the foam centered over it, grab your back panel, lay it over, match up your midpoint marks on your lining and your exterior panel first, and clip those together. Okay, now we're gonna take these to the sewing machine and just baste along all the edges of each panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alrighty, your front and back panel are now all nice and sturdy. If you have any overhang, go ahead and cut that off, actually. These are from the backpack straps. All right, you can set both those to the side. All right, let's grab your zipper, and we're gonna work on the zipper gusset now. So once again, I'm using a number 5 zipper. If you're using a number 3 zipper, you're gonna have a different size zipper panel from your material, okay? It's gonna be a little bit wider. So I just added on my zipper pull, and now we're gonna grab the 1/8 of an inch wide double-sided tape, and we're gonna add it right along the edge of our zipper tape. So do this along both sides. Now, I'm not marking any midpoints just yet. I like to install all this first and then mark midpoints. It's just personal preference, but if you'd like, you can mark midpoints on your zipper and also on your zipper panels and line them up, but I'm not gonna do that. And I do like using the tape for this step because you don't want anything to move around. So I took the tape off of the top edge of my zipper, and now I have one of my zipper panels, and I'm gonna lay it right side down, right sides together with my zipper tape. I made my zipper way too long, so I'm just gonna move my zipper pull all the way out of the way. So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna sew along this taped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Now take that zipper panel and flip it wrong sides together. So just flip it back. It is very, very narrow, especially if you're doing just the regular size. It is very, very narrow. It's supposed to be. So now with this flip back, I mean, if you want to tape it, you can, but with it flipped back, we're going to top stitch along that fold at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this open and flat. Okay, so now we're going to repeat that with the other side. When I do this, I like to line up the edges of my zipper panel with the edges that I already attached. So you can see I have the edge over here that I already attached. I'm just going to make sure these line up just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just making sure these all line up. There we go. And then I can just tape along the top. Now, if you have midpoint mark, use your midpoint and then straighten it out. You know what you're doing. Now I'm going to sew along this top taped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. And once that's sewn on, flip the zipper panel so it's right side up, wrong side against the seam, and then top stitch along that fold to hold the seam behind the zipper panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I trimmed down my zipper tape just a bit because it was so long, but I do still like it to overhang a scooch. So I'm just going to melt down the ends so it doesn't fray on me. How cute is that? So now we're going to finish up our gusset. So with the zipper right side up, I'm going to take my bottom gusset and I'm going to lay it right side down, and I'm going to match up the short ends. Now you see my zipper tape does overhang. I still want it to do that. And if your zipper panel and your bottom gusset are not the exact same width, that's okay. So now I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to baste this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to hold it in place before I put the lining on. All right, now flip this over so you're looking at the wrong side of the zipper, and then take your bottom gusset lining and lay that right side down over the back of the zipper, lining it up with that edge you just basted, and clip together if you need to. And now sew along the short edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So now pull the lining back and the exterior back. How fun is that panel? Isn't that fun? I love these colors. Oh, I love them so much. Get them nice and taut. Nice and taut. You don't want one being all loosey-goosey, the other one being taut. So now we're just going to top stitch along the bottom gusset seam right here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we have to repeat for the other side. So I'm going to take my exterior bottom gusset and lay it right side down, matching it up right sides together with the zipper gusset, and lining up those two short edges. And if one is a little bit wider than the other, then I just center them. So for example, my bottom gusset is just a scotch wider than my zipper, completed gusset. So I just center my zipper gusset over it. And I'm going to baste this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then with the zipper wrong side up, take your lining gusset and bring it so it's right side down on the back of that zipper. Line it up with that short edge you just basted, clip together. And we're going to sew these short edges together at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. And I forgot to do this on the other side, but if you want, you can kind of trim down those corners of the gusset just to help reduce bulk later. And now flip this out so the lining and the exterior of the gusset are wrong sides together and pulled away from that zipper panel. Again, get them nice and taut. And let's just top stitch right over that bottom gusset seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so, so cute. So if you find that like one gusset panel is wider than the other. So for example, over here, I have, my bottom gusset is wider than my zipper gusset. I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm just gonna trim it down from where it's wider to about 1 inch further down. So I'm just kind of angling it down. The other side seems fine. Just to make it a little bit easier in the end, but I don't like trim the entire gusset down or anything like that. Just make a little angle so it's not a jagged difference. So now what we want to do is we want to get the lining of the bottom gusset and the exterior of the bottom gusset all lined up and wrong sides together. Because right now it's all a little loosey-goosey and I know it feels like my lining is too big because it keeps rippling. It's because of the curve. It's not too big. It's the right size. So we're going to go around, and you can see as I go around, I straighten it out. So I straighten out those raw edges, and then I clip them together. And you'll notice once you straighten them out, they match up. They're not all ripply and loosey-goosey. So do this on both sides of the lining and exterior bottom gussets. And then you take this to the sewing machine and just baste along both sides of that bottom gusset at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, holding the lining and the exterior gussets together. So pretty. All right, so now we want to find the midpoint marks. So line up those gusset seams together. And I even like to use a couple clips to make sure they don't move around on me. And we're just going to go all the way to the bottom gusset and then pinch and use some scissors to clip there to mark that midpoint. Do the same thing on the zipper gusset. All the way to the top, pinch and clip. I'm going to repeat this on the other side. All right, it's time. It's time to put it all together. I'm going to tell you, this is one of the easiest gussets I've ever sewn, and I sew a lot of gussets. So I'm going to start with the front panel right side up. Gusset, we're going to flip it so it's lining or wrong side out, just like this. Look at your zipper. When the zipper closes, it should be closing towards the left, so that's good. And we're going to find the midpoint on the edge of the zipper gusset, and we're going to line that up with the midpoint on the very top of our front panel. We're going to use some clips to hold this in place, just like that. Then we're going to go to the bottom, find the midpoint mark on the bottom of your front panel, and the midpoint on the bottom of your bottom gusset, and clip these together. Now flip this to the side, find the mark for the gusset that is on your front panel, and the seam for your gusset between the zipper panel and the bottom gusset is going to match up with that mark, and we're going to clip together. Do the same thing on the other side, seam to mark. Okay, and I'm going to start by looking at the back of the front panel. I'm just going to kind of tuck in the top corners. So this top curve, depending on your material, you might have to cut into the gusset to help it spread around these top curves. I know for the other one, the one with the star, because I use a thicker material, I'll have to do that. But with this one here, I really don't have to, because the Theralux is really not that firm. Okay, but for these bottom corners, I do want to help the gusset spread. So I'm going to go over to the gusset side here, and I'm just going to make about 3 little clips into the gusset that are about 1/8 of an inch deep. And then I'm going to tuck in the corner of my front panel, and I'm going to help that gusset spread around those corners so I don't have a whole bunch of bubbling. There we go. So we just spread it around and clip it together. And do the same thing on the other corner. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and with the gusset lining side up, so gusset side up, lining side up, we're going to just top stitch this on, or you could sew it. We're going to baste it, top stitch it, sew it, whatever you want, at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I don't normally do that. I normally like to start with the actual seam allowance, but because of how this works later, it works out really well. So we're going to just sew this on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, baste it if you'd like, or you can use a smaller stitch length, whatever you're more comfortable with. I do suggest you use a zipper foot for this and a stiletto and go nice and slow. All right, we got it on. How was that? I feel like that was pretty easy, right? You are going to be covering some of the zipper tape here with your binding. It is a very, very tight sew along the top with the zipper, especially if you're not using the deeper, the wider version of this pattern. So now I'm going to grab my binding. I'm not going to show you working with the elastic binding. It's very simple. So any type of binding you want to use here. You guys know how much I love this adhesive binding. However, it is a little wide. So the nice thing about that folded binding, so the nice thing about this here is that it's a little bit more narrow. This is about a 3/4 inch wide strip, and then the binding I'm using right now, the adhesive one, is a 1 inch wide. We're going to sew this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so either works. But the nice thing I'll just show you when you use the elastic binding is that you can kind of pull it around the curves, so you don't have any wrinkling or pleating or rippling or anything like that. It's nice and smooth. It's very easy to work with. Like I said, I'm not going to walk you through it, but it is very easy to work with. It's a great option. So you can see I'm just folding my binding in half because I feel like it makes it easier for me to get it centered properly. And I like to look at it from the back of the front panel because that's what I won't see whenever I'm sewing it on. And I like to start at the bottom. I'm just going to wrap it around the edge of my material and stick it in place. And depending on the material you're using, you might also need to use clips if it doesn't stick very well. Alrighty, once you have it clipped in place, once again, look at it from the gusset, lining side up, and we're going to sew this on now at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to use a top stitching length for this, but it is a little bit deeper than the first one, but it should still be pretty easy. You shouldn't be fighting anything here. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Oh, this is looking so cute. If you want a little sneaky peek, you can flip it out real quick. How stinking cute. It's so vibrant, isn't it? It's so cute. Okay, so now I just have to repeat that for the back. I would suggest opening your zipper at least halfway. And we're going to take the back panel, lay it right side up, take our gusset, lay it right side down, top edge, midpoint of the zipper gusset, matches up with the top midpoint of the back panel, and clip together, right sides together. Do the same thing on the bottom. And the second panel is always harder. That's just how it always is. The second panel is always harder to install. But it still should be pretty simple compared to bigger bags. Then line up your gusset mark with the seam of the gusset. So it's the seam between the zipper panel and the bottom gusset. Lines up with that gusset mark on the back panel and clip together. Do this on both sides. And then clip around the top curve. And I think I will actually let this spread out a little bit because it was pretty tight when I was sewing it earlier. So I'm just going to cut little tiny slits into that top zipper gusset just to make it easier to sew around these top curves. And then on the bottom corners for sure, like 3 or 4 little snips into the gusset so it can spread around those tight corners. All right, once you have this clipped together, we're gonna take it to the sewing machine, and again with the gusset lining side up, push down that other panel out of the way and top stitch, base stitch, whatever stitch, around this entire clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold them together, and I do suggest back stitching at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, you're just about done. So once you have those basted together, once again, grab your binding of choice, and I'm gonna be honest, I think you should use the elastic. I do. I think you should use the elastic. I think it looks better, and it's much easier to work with, and it's a better size. I feel like this 1-inch wide stuff is just a little bit too big for this bag, and the elastic is just so easy to use, and it looks so good on those corners. But I'm going to continue using this because this is what I started with. So once again, I'm just going to wrap this around the edges. Alrighty, last stitching. Once again, gusset, lining side facing up, top stitch this binding on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Go slow, use a stiletto and a zipper foot to help you get around those corners. Are you ready? The best part. Oh my god, I love these little bags so much. I am so addicted to these things. I could just make 1,000. I probably will. I hope Kayla comes out with templates for these because I will buy them. Oh, I just love them. They're so stinking cute. So poke out those corners gently. Just go around nice and gentle everywhere. God, these colors are so good. And then poke out the top gusset really well. Yeah, the top zipper gusset, it's just a peak. You know, it's just a peak. It's not a whole lot. So that's, if you use a smaller zipper, then you'll see more of the gusset. If you use the number 5 zipper, then you're gonna see more of the zipper. Oh my gosh, how cute is this? I can't even stand it. I just can't even stand it. It's so stinking cute. So just wherever you feel like the seams might be a little bit wonky, just give it a good pinch. Good pinch and twirl, pinch and press. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, you guys, look how stinking cute this is. I love the brightness of this. So you can get real moody. You can get really bright. I mean, God, who wouldn't love this, right? Who wouldn't love this? You know, usually I sell the things that I make, but I think I might actually have to gift a couple of these for back to school because these are so stinking cute, and I know teachers would love this so much. So like I said, this is the ultimate scrap buster. There really is no reason. If you've been making bags for a little bit, you should be able to use anything you have on hand. Woven material, faux leather, vinyl, clear vinyl, Theratex, nylon, whatever you have, you should be able to use for these little bags. If you don't have the 1/2 inch swivel, which is the only thing I think many people probably wouldn't have, use a keychain. You don't have to use the 1/2 inch swivel. Just use what you have. You don't have to use anything. You can just keep this as a loop, and you can add a keychain or something onto it at another time. It's a scrap buster. A scrap buster means you don't have to go buy stuff to make it. And it's so stinking cute. Oh my gosh, I just can't even handle how adorable these little boxy bags are. I hope you love making these as much as I do. Make sure you tag Carolina Stitches in all your makes that you share on social media. If you use the video, make sure you tag me as well. I can't wait to see your version. I want to make 1,000 of them. It's just not enough time in my life to do it, but I absolutely love them. And especially if you make these for like fall festivals, fairs, craft shows, things like that, let me know, because like I said, I think these could be really good sellers. I do. I think that they would do really well. And once you get the hang of it, once you make one, you don't even have to refer to the pattern anymore. Once you make one, you can just do it. It's very intuitive, very fun. God, I just love it. I really do. So I hope you enjoyed sewing with me today. Have a fantastic day. Have a great rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, everybody.